Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is Reinventing the PMO in an Age of Disruption. My name is Robert Stickle, and I'm also joined by my colleagues Jim Patterson and Paul Estbrooks. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar's question feature to submit any questions that you may have. I will address these during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I will be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted on our YouTube channel. I will now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thanks, Robert, and welcome everybody. Pleased to have you here today. Thanks for carving out some time for us. Interesting topic on modern trends and where things are going and how we can possibly reinvent our PMOs in this age of disruption and digital transformation. So with that, let's get started. So what we're going to cover today is some of the real world business challenges that are driving the need to have this discussion or to cover this topic at all. Things are changing in a fast-paced digital world. Organizations are called to transform more and more. And in that realm, our PMOs need to evolve to support those things. And we're going to cover 5 core capabilities that we need to evolve towards and in pragmatic steps that we can look at, consider within our own organizations. Then at the end, we'll just talk a little bit about, are we moving to a world without projects? Is that realistic? Is that something that we are moving towards? And if so, what would that look like as we move forward? So the business challenges pieces and the conversations that are happening today are different depending on what level you're at in the organization. Executives are looking out at their marketplaces, their demands, the changing mindsets of customers, the speed at which things are moving, and they have things to keep them up at night. And in that realm, they say, as an organization, we need to move faster. We need to be more proactive. We need to be more innovative. We have to deliver quicker and on the mark. We have to be more customer focused. Those are the types of questions that they say, this is where we need to get to. And the question is, how do we execute and transform to become those things that we want to be? From a PMO's perspective, when we hear that, it's like, well, okay, how do we both perform and transform? How do we change without breaking things? How do we still deliver in the interim? And what do our roles look like in the future? If the nature of all this is changing, are our roles the same? If not, what do they look like? What's expected of us? And what things do we have to do in order to be considered successful as we go through that? So today we're going to focus on 5 new PMO capabilities to focus on and talk about pragmatic steps to get there. One is, becoming more agile. In this day and age, to respond to the speed of change and the dynamics of the marketplace and to be able to respond to that change and react to those things, we have to be faster at delivering. We have to do things to shift on a dime at times as an organization as the realities of the marketplace and other economic and other market capabilities become available to us that we have to respond to and deliver and meet the needs of competitive landscapes. And then there's the strategic planning. Many people are not doing that today as far as aligning that with what we're doing from a project and portfolio management perspective, and we need to start doing that. On the talent focus, it's about the people. It is the people that actually get things done, and they are the most valuable resources that we have. And in essence, no matter what we structure, we depend on them to deliver. And so we have to focus on that in the new world. And then we're going to talk about managing transformation. In this world, transformation is happening on a number of different fronts, and major change initiatives generally have a transformation name associated with that. And we have to manage this as a transformation so that we have a structured way to get from point A to point Z in a way that has the results that we're looking for without losing ground. And then we'll talk about adoption and change leadership. The success is, how do we manage and plan for that change and for that adoption such that it works for us and that we actually embody that as an organization all the way through? How do we successfully do this and not just talk about it? So let's focus on the becoming agile piece. When we talk about becoming agile, it really is about doing things in ways that help us to deliver faster, more incrementally, to meet the needs of the customer, to be more customer focused, and those types of things. And yes, we can be faster and bolder and better, but the question would be, what does that look like in our own organization as we try to embody those principles, as opposed to maybe the more traditional waterfall approaches that we grew up with? And what are we hearing about becoming more agile? Well, it's becoming more prevalent. If you look at surveys like the State of Agile survey that's done out there, or surveys that are done, or studies that are done by the analysts like Gartner and Forrester, et cetera, is that pockets of Agile are in place predominantly in most organizations. The last State of Agile said that well over 90% of organizations have Agile happening somewhere within the organization, means it's happening in some places. And it's not an indication of maybe how prevalent it is. But there's no debating that the number of Agile projects in organizations are increasing today, meaning that even if we have 90% of the organizations plus that are actually doing Agile some places in the organization, the numbers of what percentage of the projects within those organizations are being managed in an Agile fashion are also increasing, meaning maybe 90% are doing it, and maybe more and more, many more organizations have more than 50% or 60% of their projects being managed in an Agile fashion. But there's also the hard reality that in many organizations, there will always be, or maybe just temporarily be, non-Agile projects too. And we have to have a way to address those things as well in what they're calling more of an adaptive mode, so that we can have a mixed methodology approach and manage those to success as we're managing a holistic portfolio of projects and initiatives. The other reality is that there's numerous tools in place. People are using a variety of cloud tools out there to address the needs that they have as they try to adopt more modern approaches to managing work and projects and initiatives. Meaning that this proliferation of tools is creating a lot of silos and pockets of information that are making it increasingly difficult to pull together a common picture of what's going on across all projects and all efforts in the organizations, whether we're managing visibility of how the projects are tracking for our leadership, whether we're trying to manage workloads and look at, do we have the resources to do these things? It gets increasingly more difficult as the number of tools proliferate within our organization. On top of that, given the pains and the things that are keeping executives up at night, they're asking us to transform into more high-performance organizations that can deliver faster and better continuously. And in that regard, we have to figure out ways to get that done, yet still deliver in the interim in a way that doesn't make us flounder as we are groping for new ways to do things. So we have to focus on what we should do next. Let's prioritize, maybe have a roadmap of the things that we can do first without attempting to boil the ocean in the first attempt. These types of transformations do not happen overnight. They're generally multi-year efforts. So the idea is, how do you do it? In what sequence do you do it? And do we do it in ways that an organization can absorb and sustain as we do it? Now, Agile in itself really was a grassroots effort that really started being adopted at more of a team level within organizations. And as it becomes more and more prevalent in an organization, it becomes imperative that organizations get a handle on how to harness that a little bit and not lose the benefits of being Agile in the first place. So some of that does provide a bit more organization, and dare I say structure, to those Agile efforts, and maybe even combine them with the non-Agile efforts that are in there to provide holistic portfolio management of all the work going across an organization. But one of the things that we take in the scaled Agile approach is taking a more economic view of things. That economic view might be, where are we spending our dollars? What are we investing in as an organization? What is the value we expect to receive? And that may be value we expect to receive for the customer, internal or external, or it might be the value in return we expect for an organization. And so we can prioritize accordingly. More and more from an Agile approach, we're talking about the concept of delivering value. And we want to be delivering value consistently, more frequently, and more iteratively as we take these scaled Agile approaches. And as we scale Agile and do this more and more across the organization, we can embody that as a mindset. Now, we want to build incrementally with fast integrated learning cycles, meaning we want to take a scaled approach, just like we do with Agile projects. We want to do these things in iterations, and we want to tackle the things with the highest value and the shortest delivery times first, such that we can unleash these things on the organization, but do them in a pace and a scale and a scope that the organizations can learn and adopt and start to embody those things, and don't give them too much to absorb at one time so that we set them up for failure. We also want to base milestones on an objective valuation of working systems, meaning if we set goals for what we want to accomplish, let's be honest with ourselves and make an objective valuation of, what do we have in place as far as systems, what do we have in far as culture and processes and the degree of change that's needed. And let's be honest with ourselves of what it's going to take and set those milestones of accomplishment for what we want to do based upon that honest assessment of ourselves. We also want to be able to visualize and limit WIP, or work in process. In an organization, in many organizations, it's very easy to want to please and not say no to things, or tackle on and make commitments maybe blindly without knowing whether or not we have the wherewithal or the resources or the bandwidth to deliver on that. So we need to be able to visualize and limit our work in process to a degree to which we can perform based upon our velocity of delivering, the effectiveness of our teams, and just the sheer numbers of people that we have. And as we do this in a scaled agile fashion across multiple teams and multiple parts of the organization, it becomes important that we involve ourselves in more cross-domain planning, because we get different disciplines, departments, and functional areas involved in these projects. And even though they may be large in nature, we still deliver them more incrementally. And to keep on pace in these cross-domain planning exercises, even the fact that now that we're more remote and we may have geographically dispersed team members, we need to apply a cadence that we have regular check-ins and the ability to communicate where we're at, what's next, what blockers or things that we have, and make sure that we stay on track by staying in regular communication and a regular cadence of the way we deliver and execute. Important also is that we, in this agile approach, is that we unlock the intrinsic motivation of our knowledge workers, hence our people. And that may be empowering them to do the things that they need to do, to make the decisions they need to make, to innovate the way they need to innovate, so they can deliver the best outcomes for us as an organization. In essence, that concept of decentralizing decision making. So from a first step in scaling your agile, we want to take an inclusive approach. And as I mentioned, not boil the ocean. We really do need to take a crawl, walk, run type of approach. And a lot of the nature of how we roadmap this in our organization really depends on where we're starting from and that assessment of where we're really at and what we're capable of. It starts with our thought leaders, and our thought leaders really need to really put together that approach on what that future organization and that vision of what that should look like and the governance around that. And it's more than just putting a process down in place and training people on it. It's about committing to an agile mindset, top down and bottom up through an organization. You need an organization to buy in if you're going to be effectively to that, whether it be your decision makers and your executive sponsors down through the people that actually have to execute on this and back up. And then once we commit to actually achieving a mindset and reinforcing that, we have to design the model so that we put a structure in place of how it's going to be done within our organization. And that could be different and variations depending on the nature of our businesses and such. But let's paint the picture of what that model should look like, and then put together an incremental roadmap to say, these are the steps that we're going to take in order to get there, and not expect to do this overnight. Usually these large transformations can take multiple years to happen. And this just doesn't happen from the top down. You really do need participation and representatives from the delivery teams at the bottom, because they're going to have to live with this and execute on this and make it successful. Sometimes the best thing to do is find some live projects or live projects to work within this new scaled agile type of approach, and then let them work on defining things like terminology and team interactions and things like that, and then maybe propagate that through the lessons learned through other teams as we go through this. And the other piece, other than the mindset, is we probably need to take another look at metrics and how we define what progress and success means, and what are the business goals we have for becoming more agile. In this case, traditional measures that we have, like earned value and stuff, might be replaced by other things like how much value are we delivering and how we're increasing our velocities and burn up rates and those types of things within those things. That the mindset goes along with it, the way we measure success, and how we're actually measuring the success of whether we're achieving our goals to become more agile could be another set of metrics as well. So we need to consistently decide what are the things we're going to define as success. So as we start to visualize demand from a team perspective, in an agile approach, we look at these things from more of a funnel and a life cycle of stages that we go through. And that funnel initially could be a method or a place where people can put in all kinds of crazy, wild-haired ideas. And some of them may be things we might not even seriously consider. But then once we kind of go through that funnel and do some initial vetting to be able to go through and say, okay, these are the things we're going to invest some further investigation and analysis on. And out of those will come things that we seriously want to consider doing. Should we have the time, the inclination, or the resources, or even the demand by the marketplace or our customers to do so? And that backlog could then go through the rest of our process to implement, stage, deploy to production, and actually release. So the key would be to have a funnel like this from a team perspective that we capture all ideas. Let's be innovative, but let's whittle this thing down to the things we're seriously going to consider. And then based upon our bandwidth and our ability to deliver, let's take that backlog and then move those through the funnel based upon some measure of prioritization. Now that prioritization brings you to another topic, and that's strategic planning. And in the strategic planning piece, there's two aspects of it that many organizations don't necessarily do. Yes, our executives are always, mapping out strategies for what we want to do, but sometimes they're not necessarily, in some organizations, integrated fully all the way into all levels of the organization. And from a strategic planning perspective, some organizations have the culture of we never say no. We just do everything. We're going to power through it. And oftentimes there always is a price to pay to do that, because if you commit to more things than you can do, either you're not going to deliver, you're not going to deliver with quality. You could end up having people burn out. You could actually increase turnover by putting too much strain and demands on your organization. So there's some real tangible reasons for embarking upon this, and then having some more focus on this gives us the ability to then make more informed decisions maybe on where we put our investment dollars, or to what degree we put investment dollars, and make these things more strategic in the way that we actually deploy. Now, moving forward, think about taking these strategies and making them the overarching, let's just say, beacons or guideposts to what we do. We establish these strategies, or in an agile perspective, maybe strategic themes, where we define these things like in our customer experience. Do we want, easier transactions for our customers, or more integrated products for them? Or internally, we want to have operational cost efficiency. Or maybe our goal is to enter into new markets, or to be able to digitize all of our offerings on a single platform to make it easier for us to deploy and be innovative. Or maybe supply chain transformation to be more effective operationally as an organization. So these are just some examples of what you might have as an overarching strategic theme. And these should shape our portfolios, our priorities, and our budgets based upon what the organization is defining of where we want to go. And we should connect this through to every person and every activity, ideally, within our organization. And our metrics should be leading indicators about saying, are we getting to where we want to be, not trailing indicators looking back at what did we do. Or are we getting to where we want to be as we move forward? Now, from a portfolio perspective, that will spawn efforts that align with that. I mean, if we want to be working on the right things that align to the overall goals and strategies of an organization, then the things that we put out into portfolios should have value propositions that relate to those strategic themes and align our resources and activities with the things that are in our strategies, and align the budgets and the costs, and maybe associate the revenues that we have with those things, so we can understand how we're succeeding at achieving our strategies. So we want to envision the future state, and these may embody themselves even in agile value streams, which are more continuous streams of value, where they're continuous product lines or whatever service lines, whatever they might be, that we're working on continuously, rather than distinct defined finish and end type of projects, and collectively add value ongoing within these value streams. The key is this is going to reflect and shape what we do, and making sure we have a gut check and align our efforts with strategies to say, are we working on things that really contribute to where the organization is going? And if it's not, we should give seriously consideration to why we're doing these things at all. So as we look at strategy from an executive perspective and looking at strategic initiatives, they should go through the same type of funnel with an executive suite. And it should have the same criteria, being economics focused. Is it going to drive value for this organization? Is it going to get us to where we want to be? But we have to temper the things that we want to do, because we can be very ambitious from a conceptual perspective on things like strategies, but we also want to understand and once again be honest with ourselves about the capacity of our teams, and do we have the ability within the sheer numbers of teams we have and people within those teams, and within the velocity and their ability to deliver, how frequently and at what speed. So the key is we want to make sure that the strategy is in alignment with these things. And that leads us to people, the talent focus. In this talent focus part of it, it's really an important aspect where it's always been our people that really get things done. Increasingly, there's a question mark as we evolve and change our methodologies in the way we do projects and the way we manage projects and maybe the nature of our organizations. Are things going to change for our people, and are their roles going to change, and are there things that we're going to expect of them that they're not doing today? And it's really shifting thoughts on people delivering on these initiatives and what's expected of them. So there's some change there that we have to really consider and factor in the people impacts of these things. So 2 areas to connect into primarily is the skills planning. So, it's a couple things. As we go into our roles and technology becomes more available to us, how do we understand the potential of technology and when to apply it and augment the human efforts that we have within our project and portfolio management endeavors? One thing I can think of is, can we use things like AI and automation to maybe automate more routine tasks and reporting and analytics for us, where maybe right now we're doing some manual lifting on that, where we could free up that effort or that bandwidth for more high value activities than just crunching data and numbers, for example. The old view of, the project manager of being the hard-working, kicking butt, and getting things done may not apply in the new modern world and the way our workforce is and the way the methods are. Maybe it's more of a new servant leadership type of approach, whereby our goal isn't to crack the whip, but maybe more like a Scrum Master type of focus, whereby our goal is to clear the road of obstacles and roadblocks for our teams, such that they're free to get things done, and so that they're free to innovate and do the things that they need to do and make the decisions they need to make. And the idea there is that by making my team successful, I, by default, will be successful. So the key there is we can change some of these things and base some of the decisions that we're making on things like customer and industry knowledge, because one of the benefits of Agile is being able to respond to change. And being able to respond to that change quickly, sometimes that change is innovated by the needs of our customers and what they're articulating to us that they need from us. Or industry knowledge, meaning the trends are changing, or the things that our industry is demanding, means that we have to come full circle and sometimes even do a 180 on what we're doing and stop what we're doing and really respond to that movement in the industry or in different approaches that are being taken, so that we can compete and be relevant as we go through. And then executive sponsor skills. It's more than just signing off on the dollars. If you really want to embrace a new way of doing things and truly get better as an organization, our executives need to reinforce what it is that we're preaching from an Agile perspective. We can't say one thing and do another. We want to be in alignment, top down and bottom up, about what the approach we're going to take, the results we expect, and be in alignment from the top down from the executive suite and bottom up from the teams of what we're doing. And also, in order to get better in the spirit of continuous improvement, is this idea of communities of practice. As we share experiences in this new world, having community of practice and what Agile might call a team of teams type of approach allows us to share our successes and replicate those so we get better as an organization. Also lets us to commiserate on the things that didn't work so well. And in that, we can become better as an organization and improve our skill sets as an organization across the board, and not just hold on tightly within our own teams to that knowledge, but share it across the board so that we can all improve. So the other piece is managing transformation. I think any significant change initiative that goes on with an organization has the word transformation associated with it, as I mentioned earlier on. But if we think about the process and the mindset and the culture things that we need to change to do these types of things, we actually have to have a structured effort to actually manage the transformation. That become a large program in and of itself with multiple initiatives within it to help achieve that program. And oftentimes from a business perspective, we have people leading these things that didn't necessarily manage traditional projects before. Or maybe we have people in our leadership positions that maybe haven't undertaken a large transformation project in their history before, and they're learning as they go. They're kind of building the airplane while they're flying. And so the key is it has to be managed in this transformation. We can't just expect that it's going to happen just because we say it's going to happen. So the things we have to factor in once again in this transformation is as we set our goals and objectives for a transformation, the things we want to achieve, we need to, just like the rest of it, have a metrics and economics focus to it. So make sure that we have a rationale that makes sense, that we can sell to the organization, and that we can track to make sure that we're actually on pace to do the things that we do and to get the returns and the benefits that we're looking to achieve. We also have strategic alignment, because the components of our business transformation that we're putting in place ought to also align with our overarching strategies to make sure that what the outcomes are going to be consistent with where we want to go. And it should embody some of these more modern techniques, these more lean and agile processes, and do these things in a way so that we can do these things efficiently. And as we learn things along the way, maybe alter our course and change to improve things, and maybe do things in a way that we didn't anticipate when we first got started. And those approaches help us to adjust along the way and be successful, and maybe not go down wrong roads that we have to retrench or redirect ourselves from. And another key piece is coaching sponsors. Any of you that have had agile transformations going on in your organizations either have an internal or an external coach whose job is full-time to help people to make the change, to reinforce the disciplines or the principles of the philosophy that's moving forward, and making sure that we facilitate bringing parties together so that we all row in the same direction. And that coaching sponsorship is very important if we're going to achieve overall business transformation. And then the last piece is the adoption and change leadership. One of the things that we often don't give full credence to is really the adoption and change piece of that, of making a real change in an organization. This meaning that we don't just throw something out there new, give some people some training and hope it's going to get done. We actually have to plan for how this is going to get adopted, recognize that it is a big shift for many people in an organization, and how can we make them successful and make sure that we reinforce that in a way that at the end of the day, we will not have a failed implementation of this change. So in the leadership of change, you have to have a proactive and a purposeful approach to that change. A major reason for failed or mediocre initiatives is that this aspect is not given full attention, whether it be promoting it, whether it be reinforcing it, whether it be just being a cheerleader and being an encourager in these areas. We have to have the ability to make sure that people are enabled to succeed rather than forcing them to adapt in an uncomfortable way that they may or may not embrace or succeed with. And the nice thing about this, when we talk about PMOs, is this is a great area and a natural extension for PMOs to lead on. They have historically been change agents within our organizations. They have given us the ability to get on a common songbook on having things like common metrics and common portfolios and common processes and methods to do things. And now to take this to the next step and take it into the modern age of modern approaches and modern philosophies and ways of getting work done is a great place for PMOs to really evolve and extend the value of what they're bringing to an organization. And it's not simply done by just saying we're going to give people a training class on how to do it. Now, there's all kinds of change models out there that you might look into, and we reference a few of them here. I'm not prescribing any one of those. The main message here is to be prescriptive or purposeful about the change that you want to put in place. So this concept of a world without projects, We hear the analysts talk about this a lot. We hear a lot of talk about this in the marketplace as well. Does this mean that projects are going away overall? I'd say yes and no. As organizations become more digital and dynamic, roles and titles are changing and those types of things, and we definitely are moving to more continuous flows of work, things like value streams managed by teams, and more like bringing work to the teams rather than bringing teams to the work. Those kind of things are changing, and we're taking more Scrum Master type of approaches to being facilitators for the teams so that get things out of the way so they can get things done. So things are evolving. Things are going to change. And even the analysts are saying we're moving more to product orientation in this digital age rather than project orientation. And then we have incremental iterations or releases of those products as we go continuously through. So, the traditional discrete project with a defined start and end and then doing a next one after that and those types of things, that model is changing. But our projects going away, yeah, we're calling them different things, and maybe the approach is more continuous delivery. But I think the real message is here that we do need to look at what's happening out there, and we do need to adjust and evolve with that in order to be successful and to be relevant. What doesn't change is that these capabilities are critical. I think we have to become more agile in the way we do things. We have to incorporate and embody strategic planning and strategic alignment in our organizations. We have to have a focus on our talent and make sure that our skill sets and our people are equipped to embrace this new age. And we have to manage our transformation efforts as a project or a program in and of itself, and then prepare our organizations for success with adoption and change leadership. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Estabrooks, who will give you a demonstration of how we can do a lot of these things with the tool sets that are available today. And today we're going to use the example of OnePlan and how we can embody a lot of these things all in one place. All yours, Paul.
Good day, everyone. I'm going to cover a bunch of stuff that Jim talked about and sort of show how some of that comes to life. I'm going to adjust my agenda a little bit based on some of your slides, Jim, just as we go. I'm going to walk through a couple of things: how we define strategy and OKRs, or key results and objectives, and how we might frame that into the system, how we might do intake, how we align to portfolios and programs, how we do a variety of different planning exercises, whether it's program increment planning or more traditional portfolio optimization, and then dive a little bit into how a project can get executed in here, adapting to some of these agile themes and topics that Jim's been covering. So we're going to kind of weave our way through the system. It's a bit of a tour for people maybe who haven't seen this before, but I wanted to kind of bring all this together and show you these different key components and how they help enable an organization going through this type of transition. I've logged into OnePlan right now. I'm going to use two different environments as I go through this. This is one of our demo environments that we use quite frequently. And I'm going to start with looking at our strategic alignment. So how we would define strategy. So it's going to dive me in here, and you can see right on the screen now, we have a list of objectives. So Jim talked about this in terms of strategic planning and strategic alignment. So from a corporate execution perspective, here we're looking at it and saying, leadership has articulated that these, 6 or 8 objectives there are the key things they're trying to accomplish this year. So those are important. Each one of them, if you drill into one, has a set of criteria and information we might want to capture, and it has some key results, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second. It has a start and end date, presumably that'd be the year. It has a bunch of other information. It also has a frame here where we could say we might be simultaneously executing on the current objectives while we're planning next year. So we would have a set that are proposed and a set that are active, meaning the ones that we're attempting to accomplish now while we start thinking about what's next. That might be a quarterly cadence, a semi-annual cadence, or an annual one. So I've defined my objective here. Underneath each of those objectives, if I just expand this a little bit, you see we also have a set of key results. So for each objective, we've articulated what are the things we would need to accomplish or complete or realize, I guess would be the best way to say that, that would determine that we've accomplished the objective. And so again, framed out with some information, they could be proposed or active. We could do reports on them like status reports and so forth, and I'll dive into that a little bit more later. But I have this information, it has an owner, It has all of these other components to it, and again, fully configurable for what information you might want to capture. So I'm going to use that a little bit later as we get into some other pieces, but what I wanted to show was for that strategic planning piece, just to sort of set the stage. And it's not necessarily we start here, but let's just sort of start this journey here. We've articulated our objectives and what it will mean to have accomplished them. What are the things we will have to say we did that we can then say, thus we met the objective. So that's all part of the one plan solution. It's built in as a set of capabilities. And you could do multi-tiered. You might have corporate objectives, business unit objectives, and then key results under that. You can tier this out as you see fit. We're showing a sort of very simple structure, but certainly a very effective one nonetheless. So that's our OKR setup. So we've sort of defined all of that. Now we need to do intake and then look at these projects and requests and initiatives through a couple of other lenses and sort of build on that. So I'll start by looking at intake or my ideation. So I could come in here and say, I want to create a new idea and fill out webinar example. There we go. We're going to add this new idea to the system, and it's going to give me some information to fill in. And you could see it can be associated to an objective that we just defined a minute ago, or associated to a program, which I'm going to get into in a bit more later. It's aligned right now with a business unit, and I could change that if it's not the correct one. And all of this other information, including an alignment on a more traditional prioritization, some business case data and other information that we may want to capture. Again, configurable. So here's where we might capture all of those ideas and those requests, that backlog, which was in one of Jim's slides. So think about that sort of coming into this component. And now I've got this list, that's sort of the backlog, if you will, on the screen, and I could start to approve these. You can see some are rejected, some are in review, some are approved. And as they move through whatever that process is, they find their way into a portfolio and a program potentially, and also align to some strategic objectives. So think about that as a matrix of information. So that's my intake. Now if I dive over to the portfolio, you'll see here we have two primary portfolios. And I can just jump into one real quickly. A portfolio, it has in this case, a manager and an executive sponsor happen to be the same, but they could be different. It's aligned to a business goal, or it could be aligned to an objective. Although objectives, projects or programs within this portfolio might actually map out to different objectives. The portfolio might be a command and control structure, whereas the objectives are being hit across that. So think of that matrix. So it may not align in that specific way, and that's okay. Again, it can have that same workflow and governance structure and other information. It has a budget and a current forecast, and it has a remaining budget, meaning we have some programs in here, but they're not yet consuming all of our financials. So our portfolio has its own budget. Here it has also its own status report or current status on those different indicators. And then we sort of drill down in the program. It likewise, each program would have a budget, and underneath that are the projects. So in this particular model, we're using that sort of portfolio, program, and project model where that data is rolling up from project to program and to here in the portfolio. And we can see what was the budget allocated to this portfolio and how is it being consumed and how is that progressing in terms of overall performance of that portfolio. So if I jump back here, I've got a host of other lists and views. I want to blow this one out a little bit. I want to look at this and say, now you can see this is that overarching architect or structure. Portfolio, there's the program, and inside this portfolio are several programs, and underneath that are a combination of projects and epics, because we're trying to accommodate that adaptive world where some projects are being done through a more a strict agile format, hence the name epic, and others maybe are following either a hybrid or a more traditional model, and they're being listed here and identified as a project. What you'll also see on this screen is that each of these epics and projects is linked to a myriad of tools. As part of that transformation and adoption and change, we want to eliminate or limit the disruption we place in some areas. We don't need to. So OnePlan gives us that ability to connect to a variety of different scheduling tools. So your different departments or groups may have adopted specific tools for good reason. You know, some like Planner, and that's what they want to use. That's the level of depth of detail they need to go. Others, because they're more agile oriented, are using Jira or they're using DevOps. Others might be using Project for the Web or Project Professional because they need that additional complexity. Fine, use the tool you need to. We will connect to it. We will bring that data in. We'll be able to do some common resourcing. We'll be able to do status reporting, manage budgets, align it to strategy, all the things we're trying to do, and allow those groups to continue to use the tools they're using where they're comfortable and not bring additional disruption to that part of the exercise. So you can see these different projects here. I'm going to flip to a different view here really quickly, project summary. And here what I want to do in my project summary is, I'm going to turn the group off, and I want to look at a filter, and I'm going to filter on associated results. I'm going to pick one. Whoops, picked the wrong one. There you go. I've picked one, and now I can see these two projects are actually linked to that specific key result that I've checked off. Actually, I've checked two off, so let me just uncheck one of them. I've now picked that particular key result, and I can quickly see what are the projects or epics in this case that are aligned to that. So I have this matrix of data. They belong to different programs and portfolios, but they also are key to the accomplishment of a specific key result, which will ultimately lead to the completion of an objective. So I wanted to show you that linkage and that sort of that matrix of information. We have in here other ways of looking at this data. So right now I want to look at this in a board type view, and I'm looking at it by business unit. I might want to look at it by goals by program. So I want to see how my different goals are being met and the different programs. So my lanes are programs and my columns are these overarching business goals. Or it could be the objectives if we wanted to sort of put that into place instead. And then you could see potentially there's some stuff in the backlog that I might want to drop into where it belongs by dragging and dropping it in. So I have that capability. You can also see in here these different strings which communicate to us where there is a dependency between projects. The red indicates a blocker, so we need to sort that out. Others are dependency or they're related type projects, and we want to have that visualization. I mentioned I was going to use a second environment, and I have that one over here, very similar information. But I wanted to show something here that goes to some of the stuff that Jim was covering in the slides, and that is this idea of program or PI planning or program increment planning. So this particular demo environment has that turned on. So I have my columns are my program increments. You can see program increment 1, 2, 3, 4 with date ranges. And I have a set of projects. I have budgets for each program increment as to how much work we can get done in each program increment. And then I have this sort of running backlog of items that I can drag into a PI as I see fit. I'm just going to leave that one out for now. This is a modern method of planning. It's more aligned with Agile and with the way people are trying to work these days, where you have that backlog, and I mentioned that earlier. It would have come from intake, and now I'm starting to look at where does it fit into a program increment. And each program increments might be aligned to a product or a line or a value stream that we're trying to manage. And this is how we want to prioritize the work and deliver in these incremental chunks. This is literally how we plan to work on OnePlan itself, is using this type of technique in this exact tool. So I wanted you to see sort of that different pivot on how we might use the board's functionality to align with where people are going with this agile transformation. Jump back to my other environment. The third type of view I want to show as we go is this idea of roadmaps. So I'm looking at a roadmap by business unit, and I want to see all the projects that I have and how they align and interrelate. Color coding here is health. So different type of pivot. I can do it on business unit. I might have other views in here. So if I want to look at it by the different goals we have or objectives, I could see things and how they align in that manner. So a different visualization of the data, and you can sort of right click and jump into and start working on that project, or we can jump out to other views. Go back to my portfolio summary, and I want to drill into a project and spend a bit of time there. It's expand this. I'm going to jump into this project, look at some of the details first. Again, the standard governance structure, if you needed that. Here it is. It's associated with an objective and also with a key result. Another data we're capturing, again, configurable as to what you might want to capture and need to track. It in and of itself has a business case. This would have been data that would have started in that intake component and traveled along as this was approved and moved forward. It has a budget and other information. It has its own current health, which we're tracking from the status report and on through. Likewise, the tool supports sort of financials. I won't spend a ton of time here, but you can see here we've got a budget and we've done a revised forecast. Perhaps, at midpoint in the project, we've now stepped through and looked at where were we originally and where are we now, and we're looking at those and comparing them. Jim talked about talent in his slides, and I wanted to spend just a second on that to show you we have this ability to do resource planning at this project level. And right here, I'm looking at my resources and seeing these are all the people that are scheduled to work on this project, and we're going to get into scheduling in the next sort of section here. But I wanted to sort of draw your attention to it. We're looking at places where we might have over allocation. First, I can look at Daniel and quickly see what tasks he is on in this particular project. But if I want to go one layer above, I'm going to go down here and look at it. And I want to look at Daniel. There he is. And see what other projects he's actually on. Because there's this over allocation. I could see this minus 72, 221, and so forth. He's 32% over allocated. Well, that's because another project actually has full time in those 3 months. So that's where my conflict resides in large part. And potentially that's because that project has been delayed for some reason, and thus those hours have shifted into the window that I was looking to use him. So we have this ability here to look at resourcing based on capacity, but also quickly and clearly understand what the other competing interests are and make sure that we are planning for those or working around them. Potentially we need to replace Daniel on this project because of that commitment, or we may need to replace them there based on some of the criteria that Jim talked about. Is there an alignment here of talent or team dynamic where this individual really should be here as opposed to on those other projects? Now we know what we're dealing with and how we might address it. Jump over to the work plan for a couple of seconds. There's a few things I want to show here that gets into some of the modern, so this disruption, this agile piece, and I wanted to show you a few things. I'm logged in here. This is my schedule. You will see that this schedule is connected to, in this case, Project Professional, where we're pulling this data in. But what I also want to show, if I expand this out a little bit, is in this schedule view, we've now turned on the capability that you could see not everything is a task that might have come from project. These are backlog items that are actually coming from DevOps. It's the other connected system in this particular example. But we also have in here, we might have things like an issue that's showing up in my task list because it's linked to, or it's related to this particular summary task. And so I want to be able to view that. So we've taken these items that appear here and said, we want to be able to view them in a single view and be able to understand all the things that are going on in my schedule, drawing in from, in this case, Project Professional and DevOps, where we're storing that data, but bringing it here to a single view where I, as the PM and as the project team, can interact with and understand what's going on and what the status is of those tasks and those items. If I switch over to the backlog, I just wanted to show this quickly. In my backlog view, again, this is items that are coming from DevOps, and we've added in a capability. I'm just going to move that out of the way for a second. We've added in a capability where I can show some sprints that we might have created, and then I can iterate on those sprints and say, well, that's that particular iteration, that's what's included in it. This iteration has these items, this iteration has these. I could add a new sprint. I'm going to add a new sprint quickly. I could define what the time is, what target points or target hours I might be working towards, and start to assign tasks to it. So I can actually do some sprint planning if I want to get really deep into the Agile space. Again, connect it to DevOps or to Jira, bring in those work items, and start to figure out where stuff resides and where it should be assigned to. As part of this sort of new way of thinking and this new way of delivering this work, this gives me that ability to define iterations at the project level and start to put the tasks where they belong, mindful of the amount of hours we might need to do. We're over on this particular one, or the number of points if we're using a point system. I'll wrap up with a good place to end always is reporting. So in here we have, let's turn on Power BI. We have a rich set of reports that includes a lot of what I've covered. We have down here the ideation reports. So where are those ideas coming from that are filling up our backlog? Where are we with respect to our objectives? Oops, objective progress is what I want. There we are. We're doing really well on that top objective. We're not doing so well down here. Maybe we want to drill in a little bit deeper and look at our key results progress. Well, we haven't even started this particular one. We've accomplished this one up at the top. So there's that OKR and how that linked back and how that's linkage to strategy. And then really quickly look at the different portfolios, how they're performing, drill into them, see how things are, and all of this. And I won't spend a ton of time on Power BI, but we ship these rich reporting packs based on the modules that our clients are turning on and the kinds of data that we're tracking to get them started to do this very rich analysis and rich reporting against this solution. We've covered a lot of ground today and what I've shown you, but I wanted you to see how we help organizations define strategy, objectives, and key results, how we help them define things like portfolios and programs and projects, do intake, and the different methods of planning and how we can support both the traditional and the agile, or a combination of both, to drive people forward in this age of disruption. And with that, Jim, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can.
All right, terrific. Well, let's summarize a little bit. Thank you for the great demonstration and overview. And by the way, if you guys want some more deep dive, please reach out to us, and we're happy to accommodate that. So in summarization, as we look at this age of transformation and digital transformation specifically, we are redefining how we do work. There are new mindsets, methods, and techniques that are being adopted by organizations, and some faster than others. New PMO approaches, outlooks, and adaptive PPM approaches are needed to really accommodate and embrace these things fully. And you saw some of the things from what Paul demonstrated to you today. And a modern user experience is expected by today's workforce. We have an app culture, a younger workforce out there that is used to things just installing on their phones or their tablets and just working. And we want our project and portfolio management to emulate that. And we need to incorporate tools that are appropriate for the user role, maturity, and the type of work that we're doing, and bring it all together in something like OnePlan, such that we can actually work with it all in a common hub. We must support a variety of execution methodologies like we talked about. And then change and adoption must be addressed from very early on in the transformation process and be reinforced and incrementally put out to the organization in increments that they can absorb and succeed with. Now, if we do all these things and end up with a better user experience, it also derives better participation from our user base. But with better participation, we get more complete information and more effectiveness. Ultimately, it results in better collaboration across all areas of the business. So a little bit about OnePlan. We are a multi-gold certified Microsoft partner who has a particular focus in project and portfolio management. We have been named their Project Partner of the Year worldwide for project and portfolio management. And we also have designations and certifications in Scaled Agile with Scaled Agile Inc. So we can help you on all these dimensions from a discipline perspective. And we really can help organizations with the people, process, and technology aspects of this. We're here to support you to whatever degree you'd like us to. And whether it be just implementation services, education and training on the tools and/or the disciplines, or ongoing customer support, or any advisory services you might want, or coaching for these transformations, we're happy to engage with you on these bases. But whatever it is that you'd like to the degree you'd like it. We do these webinars on a regular basis. We have 2 more coming up in the next couple of weeks, a little different topic. Next Thursday, we're doing winning at portfolio management with outcome-driven metrics. And then on the 24th, we're doing See Your Future State today with OnePlan Strategic Portfolio and Smart 360, getting a little bit more into the objectives and key results and tying these things to overall business and enterprise architectures. You can get started today and get a hands-on with OnePlan if you like today. We offer free trials if you go out to AppSource on Microsoft's AppSource and look for the OnePlan Adaptive Project Portfolio Management trial. You can get that free for access and get hands-on with that, and we'll get notification on that if you'd like some chaperoning or guidance on that. We also have different flavors of that, whether it be just focused on strategic portfolio management, just agile portfolio management, or what Paul did, the more expansive adaptive portfolio management is available to you as well as we do have a template for professional services automation. From a next steps perspective, we do offer roadmap workshops, which is a way for us to kind of talk to you a little bit about your current use of solution and tools and maybe what some of your aspirations are for future state, and then help you determine what it would take to get you there, what some approaches are, and what it might cost to do those types of things. So feel free to engage with us to explore this a little bit if you like. So from the next steps, you can do a free trial. Happy to have you do that and support you and chaperone you on that. The roadmap workshop is there for you, but if you're not ready for any of that yet, we are happy to schedule a personalized one-on-one demo where we might address maybe some more focused requirements and use cases for your organization. So just reach out to us at contact@oneplan.ai. And also, you can also reach out to either Paul or myself directly if you'd like to on those things, and we're happy to support you. We'd love to engage with you. So anyway, I'd like to thank you for spending the time with us today. I trust that you got some value and some information out of this. And if we can help you at all moving forward, we'd love to. This is our passion and our mission. So have a great day, and thanks again.